Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here is a look at the daily time frame of the ES. In the previous session, we had quite a bit of selling pressure here. You can see right there, that's Tuesday's market selling off, taking out the previous session low there and dropping, bouncing just before the close. And now we're seeing a bit of a bounce back here in pre-market trading Wednesday morning, where we're pulling back into some of the areas where it kind of sold off from. So on an intraday basis here, keeping an eye on 2650 is going to be very important. Any retest of 2650 that fails to see acceptance above that zone could be an opportunity for bears to defend and try to extend the move lower. This pullback here is a one-day pullback within a pretty strong trend, depending on which periodicity we're looking here. Just over the last couple of weeks has been very intense, and over the last month or so it's been very intense as well. We could see a little bit more pullback within that structure here at the very least, and right now 2650 is the level to watch for signs of weakness. If we take a look here at the NQ, you'll see very similar price action. This one also seen quite a bit of selling pressure in the previous session. Sold off through the prior low, sold off nicely and retesting two-day lows here. At the moment, we're seeing a little bit of a bounce back in pre-market trading. Again, any pullback to the prior low here, which is 67.12, and that midpoint 67.03, right? So you have, just call it 67.10. That's a zone right there that if price pushes into that area and can't find acceptance beyond that area, 67.10, 67.20, then we may begin to see some sort of selling pressure into the market, and that could be a significant continuation to the downside. Again, that's going to be the pivot though. Acceptance above that area could be already another one-day pullback and go. This market has been very resilient here in the near term. We have some headline risk here to keep an eye on, but for the most part, again, we have some clear levels to watch as pivots throughout the day. If we take a look at crude oil, you'll notice that crude oil right now is also bouncing. Had quite a bearish day in the previous session, closed with a pretty nice little bounce and has continued a little higher off those lows, but that was a pretty strong top up there. It reached 55.51 as the high there, and basically had a pretty strong rejection, dropped to new lows. It was an outside day down for a while, and then it bounced into the close. Right now inside day, and it's chopping around multi-day midpoints. I mean, the midpoints of these days are all kind of sitting right here, and it's chopping around. I would say again, in the near term, the way that this thing has rejected here, we could be looking at some selling pressure that could come into play if price cannot establish acceptance above 53.75. 53.75 or so, 53.80, that zone. Any failure to get above that zone could be an indication that we could be looking at more weakness. But again, the short-term trend is very strong. The medium-term trend is also strong. So it would not surprise me here if price is able to push above that 54 zone and start to move higher. But right now, the key zone to watch, 53.75 to 53.80 for signs of weakness. Any weakness there could be an indication of selling pressure to come on a short-term basis that could pick up steam on a swing basis. All right, now looking at gold futures. Again, we've been talking about how gold has been stuck at value, chop, 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 stuck in the mud. But once this thing got too tight, I also mentioned that it wouldn't surprise me here if we took out one of those edges to widen the range. And in this case, it did. It came down and dropped through that edge right there and took it out in the previous session and is now pushing back up. I mentioned that if you take it out, you're likely going to see the market swing back up. And then once it does that, it could swing back in, and now it has a wider trading range to do business instead of something that had narrowed to that little bit right there. So at this moment, we're seeing a rejection of this prior low, and that suggests more upside ahead. Again, in the short term here, Price is trading and choppy right around the previous month's close, and the flow remains to the upside, but it could be a quiet, choppy affair up. But as long as price continues to hold above, really 1277, 1278, this thing has upside potential toward 1295 and maybe even as high as 1300 to 1302. Alright, that is it for now. We'll see how this plays out heading into the rest of the session. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trading room.